a flash of light as bright as 1,000 suns. Could an ancient civilization really be wiped out in the blink of an eye? This question, taken from ancient Hindu legends, may sound like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it hints at a real mystery: the sudden disappearance of the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the world's oldest and most advanced societies, some 9,000 years ago. The Indus people built cities with technology far ahead of their time, yet around 1300 BC, this thriving civilization vanished without a trace. Was it a natural disaster that destroyed their cities, or something far more extraordinary? Let's uncover the mysterious tale of the terrifying event that wiped out an advanced ancient civilization in seconds. About 200 years ago, a curious explorer named Charles Mason stepped into Punjab, now part of Pakistan, and guess what he found? The ruins of an ancient city. It turned out to be Harappa, one of the dazzling capitals of the Indus civilization. Founded around 2600 BC, this settlement dates back to the Bronze Age. But there's more. People were camping there even in the 7th millennium BC. Just imagine that. The Indus civilization sprawled across the entire Indus River Valley, covering about 386,000 square miles. That's roughly the size of modern-day Bolivia. At its peak, this civilization had a population of 5 million. That's even more than the combined population of its neighbors Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, and ancient China. Before we move on, let's touch upon an interesting topic. An intriguing picture was recently found on the internet. Picture showed a pyramid-like mountain that had been destroyed by a nuclear explosion. Unfortunately, we couldn't confirm if this place is real or where it is. Share your thoughts on this with us. In a fascinating study published in Dawn magazine, a group of researchers from the Archaeological Survey of India and IIT Kharagpur examined ancient pottery shards and domesticated animal bones found in a village called Birana, about 140 miles northwest of New Delhi. And guess what they found? This village is at least 8,000 years old. This means that the Harappan civilization, which includes Birana, is a full millennium older than the ancient Egyptian and Sumerian civilizations. This discovery completely changes our perspective on the ancient cities in that part of the world. The study also outlines the different stages that the Harappan civilization went through on its way to superstardom around 3000 BC, and how it eventually declined and disappeared. Professor Anindya Sarkar from IIT Kharagpur puts it beautifully. Our study pushes back the history to 8,000 years before present and will have major implications for the evolution of human settlements in the Indian subcontinent. Simply put, they pushed history even further back in time. At its peak, the mysterious Harappan civilization had a population of over 5 million. Considering that the Sumerians had a population of about 1.5 million, this is a truly mind-boggling number. The first clues about this lost civilization emerged in 1921 with the discovery of the city of Harappa, and that's where the name Harappan comes from. Since then, archaeologists have unearthed over 1,500 cities and settlements located near the Indus River, including the famous Mohenjo-Daro. Mohenjo-Daro is one of the finest examples of ancient urban planning. Imagine a city ahead of its time. Although the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro were first noticed by a group of archaeologists in 1911, the real excavations began in the 1920s and 1930s, led by Sir John Marshall, the head of the Archaeological Survey of India. Initially, the archaeologists didn't know what to name the city, but when they found a bunch of strange skeletons lying randomly in the streets and houses, they decided to call the city Mohenjo-Daro, which means Mound of the Dead. Despite its creepy name, Mohenjo-Daro was actually the first major urban center in the Indian subcontinent, and it was quite impressive. People who lived there weren't just sitting around doing nothing. They were knowledgeable in urban planning, agriculture, metalworking, and even written language. The city had a regular grid plan, and the houses had different rooms for different activities, like a kitchen, living room, bedroom, and even a bathroom. Yes, real bathrooms and sewage systems, just like modern houses today. The way they managed water is one of the coolest features of the Indus Valley civilization. You might think that people who lived 4,000 years ago carried water from rivers in buckets or dug holes in the ground for toilets. But the Harappan civilization didn't live like that. These ancient people thought of everything down to the smallest detail. They had a fancy water supply and sanitation system in their houses that separated the toilets from the living areas. Moreover, the city had over 700 water wells and a super sewage system that ensured the smooth flow of water. In a part of the city called the Citadel, there was a massive structure called the Great Bath, which was 275 meters long. They didn't just splash around in there. They pumped water from the Indus River to fill the bath, like they were getting ready for the biggest pool party ever. The Romans built their famous baths around 70 BC. People of the Indus Valley were enjoying their baths 2,500 years before them. It's truly amazing that Mohenjo-Daro, with a population of about 20,000 to 40,000 people, had such an advanced structure. Moreover, it wasn't even the largest city of the Harappan civilization. That title belongs to Rakhigarhi, which was discovered in 1969 and only 5% of which has been excavated. Who knows what other high-tech secrets are buried there? If Rakhigarhi was the capital, it must have been like the Silicon Valley of the Harappan civilization, way ahead of its time. If even Mohenjo-Daro had such a chic plan with its water systems, markets, and storage areas, Rakhigarhi must have had a planning department that would put today's architects to shame. Clearly, they had a secret measurement system that we still don't understand. Or maybe they were just really good at guessing. What we do know is that these ancient builders were very strict about construction standards. They used perfectly measured same-sized bricks in a 4:2:1 ratio, just like the best architectural recipe. Let's also talk about their agricultural skills. People living in cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were total pros at farming. Experts are still debating whether they discovered agriculture and animal husbandry on their own or got a few tips from their neighbors. It's like a friendly argument about who invented the best guacamole. Did they do it on their own, or did they learn the secret from someone else? Either way, they were definitely ahead of their time. About 100 years after the discovery of Harappa, an archaeologist made another major discovery with another city called Mohenjo-Daro, which means Mound of the Dead Men. By the standards of the 2nd millennium BC, this place was a futuristic wonderland. They even invented toilets. And we're not just talking about a hole dug in the ground, but real rooms with plumbing. Yes, you read that right, rooms with toilets. Mohenjo-Daro was a city planner's dream. The city was divided into two parts. The lower part was entirely residential, with streets laid out in a regular grid pattern, running from north to south and east to west. And here's the best part. There were small jugs next to the buildings for throwing garbage, like today's trash cans, but much cooler. While we are trying to solve waste management today, these ancient people had already overcome this issue. Let's talk about the Citadel, the upper part of Mohenjo-Daro. This was like the VIP lounge of the city. It had a granary, a trading center, fancy baths, and a giant public water tank that was the city's pool party spot. This tank wasn't just any ordinary tub. It was 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and 3 meters deep. They even poured a layer of tar on the floor to make it waterproof, like the luxury swimming pool of ancient times. Nearby, there was a huge barrel to collect rainwater. Clean water flowed through canals, while dirty water was discharged through gutters. This way, the water in the tank was always clean and ready to use. And all this was happening at a time when people were just learning to smelt iron. Just think how far ahead of its time it was. The Indus civilization was also quite intelligent. They had their own writing system. Scientists have unearthed ceramic tablets or seals depicting various animals, gods, and mysterious symbols. But the strange thing is, no one knows what they mean yet. They were only able to figure out that these ancient scribes wrote from right to left. I think that's pretty cool. The meanings behind these strange hieroglyphs are still a mystery, and this is one of history's greatest mysteries. This isn't the only puzzle the Harappan civilization has left us with. Mohenjo-Daro was surrounded by a high wall that historians think was there to keep people safe. But the truth is, this wall wasn't for fending off enemies, but for protection against floods. And here's another interesting detail. These people had no weapons or army, yet they weren't hermits. They actively traded with their neighbors, like Mesopotamia. This proves that you can have a great time without a war plan. Around 2600 BC, Mesopotamian tablets started mentioning trade with a mysterious and distant land. They were getting their hands on shiny things like gold, silver, copper, and lapis lazuli. Sounds fancy, right? But here's the interesting part. The Indus civilization was shipping its goods by sea. So they had their own merchant fleets, bustling cities, and even precious metals. They had no army. You might be wondering how this civilization, with all its riches, never became a target for invaders throughout its existence. Apparently, Indus leaders were masters of diplomacy, like the smooth-talking negotiators of ancient times. Just think, even today, there are many examples where conflicts are resolved without a single shot being fired. For example, in 1978, US President Jimmy Carter played the role of peacemaker between Egypt and Israel. These two countries had been at war for 30 years and had gone through 4 wars. But when peace talks stalled in the late 70s, Carter had a great idea. He invited the Israeli Prime Minister and the Egyptian President to a 2-week camp. After this little get-together, there were no further armed conflicts between the two countries. Who knows, maybe the Indus civilization also had diplomats as persuasive as Jimmy Carter, and while the world was busy with wars, they were ensuring security by talking and negotiating. We can say that the Indus civilization was definitely ahead of its time, and its diplomats were as persuasive as Jimmy Carter. But unfortunately, all this charm couldn't save them from a major disaster that struck around 1300 BC, and in an instant, the civilization vanished. All that remained were eerie city ruins and a bunch of mysterious tablets. Seriously, where did everyone go? Scientists are scratching their heads about this. There are a few theories, but none of them are definitive. Some researchers think that the Sarasvati River, their source of life, started drying up. Imagine living by a river and then suddenly it's gone. This would cause a drought and force the Indus people to pack up and move to the plains of the Ganges River. Over the years, they blended in with other people there. So one day, they were thriving, and the next day, poof, a classic case of where did everyone go? Here's another theory about what happened to the Indus civilization. Some believe they went a little overboard with cutting down trees. They needed wood to bake bricks for their magnificent cities, and before they knew it, they turned their lush forests into a barren desert. All this deforestation led to drought, and poof, the civilization packed up and left the Indus Valley. There's also the idea that the urban population may have been wiped out by a cholera or malaria epidemic. Sounds scary, right? But the truth is, there's no solid evidence to support any of these theories. Excavations haven't revealed anything to confirm these ideas. As for the Sarasvati River, it might just be an epic tale, a cool legend that no one can prove existed. But there's more. While excavating in Mohenjo-Daro in 1922, archaeologists came across something truly bizarre. They found about 40 bodies in the lower city, and some of the skeletons were lying in strange, unnatural positions, as if they had died in the middle of a dance. A spooky discovery, and this is just the beginning of the mystery surrounding this ancient civilization. In 1977, a researcher named David Davenport went to the Mohenjo-Daro excavation site and made a crazy discovery. He found a huge gap 50 meters wide. But the strange thing is, all the rocks inside this hole seem to have turned into a glassy substance, as if someone had turned up the heat to 1500 degrees Celsius. Now you might be thinking that Mohenjo-Daro had a close encounter with something as powerful as a nuclear explosion. Archaeologists encountered a layer of radioactive dust while working in Rajasthan, about 700 kilometers away. Yes, you heard that right. A radioactive cloud after a nuclear explosion could definitely travel that far. And to make things even creepier, traces of radiation were also found in Mohenjo-Daro itself. So could ancient Mohenjo-Daro have had a close encounter with something far more explosive than it bargained for? This sounds like a plot straight out of a sci-fi movie. Researchers got a little excited when they measured the radiation levels of some of the remains found in Mohenjo-Daro. Guess what they discovered? The radiation was 50 times higher than normal. It's like stepping onto the set of a sci-fi movie. Also, the ancient Indian epic Mahabharata mentions a super powerful explosion with the brightness of 10,000 suns that could burn entire nations. All signs point to a nuclear explosion in Mohenjo-Daro thousands of years before nuclear power plants or weapons were invented. So how is this possible? Let's meet in the comments.